Okay, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. This is episode 14. That is 2 weeks worth of episodes. That's pretty cool. I'm
Wild.
joined with Connor today. Unfortunately, it's just Connor. Adam couldn't be here today, but the show must go on. This week's episode is really, really cool. We're working on the trend that is going around right now and giving our takes on the MLS Mount Rushmores from the 2010s because we've only watched until the 2010s or starting from the 2010s. So we're only going to go from there. Let's jump right into Scarf of the Week, as we always do. Connor, what do you got?
Do you even have to ask that question?
I feel like it's just tradition where I ask, you answer.
Yeah, I have an Atlanta United scarf, believe it or not.
No way.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And good thing brother came through for the birthday, and we're rocking. Whoop, that's upside down. It's the wrong way around.
Oh, Jesus.
New York Red Bull, nice little, I don't know if it's like a Christmas scarf or a digital scarf. I like it. I think it's really neat, really fresh. It'll be joining the wall with the other collections relatively soon.
Yeah,
So, like
good to
we
see it
mentioned
from here.
before, yeah. So, like we mentioned before, we're going to go ahead and do MLS Mount Rushmores from the 2010s. Very exciting. We're going to do the East this week and then head over to the West next week when Adam's back to join us. Because we always love a good little bit of Adam's hot takes. And I think really Adam is unlucky here because he doesn't get to talk about his favorite team
Mm.
in FCC, and he gets to I guess if you're going side by side, he's gonna get his Colorado and his Vancouver's, and he'll be good. He'll be good.
He'll be happy.
Um, but why don't we jump right into it, and I'll let the Atlanta United
Don't you do
um,
I could hear you using the quotes, and I can't even see you.
fan. um, I'll let him start off with his Mount Rushmore.
All right, well, for Atlanta, there's three must-haves. You must have these three in your Mount Rushmore. Spike the dog, Waka Flocka, and the Home Depot.
Clearly, there's
Clearly.
nobody else who could fit in.
Yeah, you're not getting your money without the Home Depot. Waka Flocka is an amazing fan for us, and Spike is a dog, so he must be on there. All right, so I still stick by the you. I think there's three you must have for the actual Atlanta United Mount Rushmore. Josef Martinez, Miguel Almiron, and Michael Parkhurst. I think those three have to be on there. And then I think you can go with a couple different options for the fourth one. But for me, I went with Tata Martino. Just because,
Interesting.
yeah, so I went with him because he was the coach that got us to the finish line, got us the championship in year two, which is just wild. I thought that he did a really great job of meshing everybody together. I mean, it was a brand new team, and he got these guys to play very well together in such a short amount of time. Um, Josef Martinez is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, the guy is one of the most lethal strikers in the league. Miguel Almiron was a superstar. He's still a superstar, but I would say he was arguably one of the biggest to ever play in MLS. And it's hard to hate him. I mean, the guy was just so likable. And then Parky, first captain, will always be memorable for the team. And plus, he's a legend in the league. Got to put him on there. And then I also had honorable mentions. I put,
Of course you did.
yeah,
Everybody else.
I have honorable mention for all the teams, but I picked Jeff Lorenowitz, Tito Villalba, and Brad Guzan for my honorable mentions.
That's disrespectful.
Is
I'll
it?
tell you why. I've got two of the ones you have on there.
Okay.
I've got Yosef, obviously no brainer, most prolific goal scorer in the league since he's been here, 90 goals in 103 appearances. That's stupid.
Uh-huh.
MLS Cup, U.S. Open Cup, most career hat tricks, and he did it in 44 games.
Yeah.
Most consecutive games with a goal, unreal, right?
MVP
Miguel
also.
Almiron, what's that?
He also won MVP.
I have that there. I just didn't care to make the announcement
Nah,
because
that's a pretty big
I
award.
had two players I had two players nominated for MVP once, and they both got screwed. But
Yeah.
that's a
Wham.
story for another day. I got Miggy in there, right? Again, electrifying, prolific. The way that he just tore people up
Yeah.
was unreal, right? The way that he would run at defenders, he'd skin them, and I'm sure he ended a few careers along the way, and then he set up a ton of players. Whether his numbers aren't great, right? He's got 22 and 21 in
Hmm.
70. So like his numbers don't scream like, oh, this is the best player in the league, but the way that he played and yeah, let's shout out Tata Martino, right? Like he got him to play that way, but the way that he got to that point was unreal.
Yeah.
I also have Brad Guzan on there, maybe a little bit soft spot for a goalkeeper, but it's clearly he's one of the best goalkeepers in the league. He's got a number of huge saves that he comes up with. And the reason why it's really important that he does that is because most of the time it comes after playing for 60 minutes and doing not a thing because nobody can get the ball off you guys. He's good in the air, he's a good shot stopper, and he keeps them in these big games. And yeah, I'm very salty about the one on that one touch save that he made when BWP was 2 yards out
Yeah, I think I
last
remember
year.
that.
Yeah, that's the one that kind of stuck out in my head is like this is the guy, right? I have
Hmm.
goalkeepers on a lot of my teams just because
I wonder why.
I know how important they can be. But you are disrespecting the best right wing back in league history
Yeah.
by not even giving him an honorable mention. Disrespectful. Only one that I could have flip flopped for somebody else. I also had Parkhurst on my radar. Lorenowitz I didn't have for Atlanta. I had them somewhere else, but um, I cannot believe you didn't even mention Gressel's name. He's a right mid or even a center mid by trade when they drafted him, and they turned him into the best attacking wingback in the history of this league. So good going forward. He would set up all his teammates. No team knew how to answer him. It was very much like Marcos Alonso under Antonio Conte in Chelsea. It was the same exact response. Nobody could stop him. And they ran away with the league. It was a huge part of the success, and that's why he got a huge price tag when he left to DC. And you don't even
Yeah.
give him an honorable mention.
He probably should have been an honorable mention, but I still wouldn't put him on my Mount Rushmore.
So the reason I don't put Parkey in there is because he did a lot of his work somewhere else.
Yeah,
That's
but
just
he was the first club captain, and
I get
I
that.
think
I
he
get
was
that.
probably really influential for a lot of the guys,
If
like getting
we
them
if we did this
together.
after their first if we did this after their first year, then I have Parkey there, no question. But after I saw how Gressel grew and became very good, yeah, we'll leave it at that.
Well, the Rushmore is definitely going to change in a couple of years. Like, if I could see Miles Robinson getting on there if he sticks around. M-
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I can't really see PT or Barco getting on there just because I think one good season and they'll dip, and I don't think one good season deserves to be on there.
no, yeah, like I said, there's a very high standard for um, getting to this point, right? The only team that's going to have some iffy choices is FCC because they've only been around for a year. Excuse me.
Barely been around.
But, but let's why don't we move on then and get closer to FCC so we can talk about them. For Adam, of
For
course.
Adam, of course.
Chicago. I want you to picture. Let's jump way back to the early 2010s. People were still going outside. We were in school. The only thing we had to worry about was what time we were going to play. Chicago was the laughing stock of MLS. Life was good. Fourth round of the 2012 draft comes this kid named Sean Johnson.
Hmm.
Nobody cares because he's a fourth round draft pick, fourth round goalkeeper. And they start him. And then this kid starts pulling out these really big saves. And then people start realizing that he's a good goalkeeper. And then he gets some national team attention. Now all of a sudden he's one of the biggest goalkeepers in the league. And he's got offers to go abroad. And now teams in the league are trying to get him. He goes to Atlanta for a day, and then NYC pick him up. 6 years, one playoff appearance,
He went to Atlanta.
many tough games. He stuck through it all, and he's a big reason this club didn't fade into mediocrity. He was so good at Chicago. He was the type of guy that you looked at was like, why is this guy still playing in this team? Why has nobody bought him yet? Sean Johnson makes my Chicago Mount Rushmore.
He was.
Nemanja Nikolic.
I don't mean to
Go ahead.
interrupt you, but he was at Atlanta for like a minute. I don't remember this. Did they?
Yeah, so Atlanta bought his rights to make a trade with NYC for money because Brad Guzan was already coming in.
Right. Okay.
It was literally like they took him just to flip him. He didn't. I don't think he put on an Atlanta kit.
I feel like I do remotely remember this.
Well, because I remember when this whole thing happened, they flipped him, and there was rumors that he was moving. He was moving in the East, and
Uh-huh.
we're sitting there like, okay, what team's going to get him? And nobody thought it was Atlanta because we knew Guzan was coming in.
Right.
And then they're like, Atlanta just acquired the rights. We're like, what? And then the next day is like, New York City have acquired, and we're like, oh,
Makes more sense.
classic, yeah, yeah, yeah. So we move on to 2016-17 hero Nemanja Nikolic. Who could forget dragging Chicago from the bottom of the table to a third place finish in the league with the Golden Boot and then an eventual playoff exit to the best club in league history? Yes, that's right, the Rebels. I know that's what you're thinking. Um, it's been a decade, and this is a statement, not a discredit, not a. This isn't for argument's sake. This is a statement. This has been a decade of disappointment for the Chicago Fire.
Yeah,
But he was
100%.
a little bit of a bright spot, right? He came in and he gave them hope for a year. Scored for fun, 24 goals in the season that he won Golden Boot. He had 51 over 96 games. Definitely gets on there because there aren't a lot of other bright spots to pick.
Yeah.
David Accam. What to say about David Accam? Another bright flash in a pan of disappointment. Another 2017 bright spot. He went for 14-7. And he was one of the, again, we talk about how there weren't a lot of real wingers out in the league at this point. He was one of the first real true wingers that was fast, technical, tricky, and good. People were like afraid of David Accam.
Hmm.
And then he gets sent to Philadelphia and falls off the face of the earth. But that's for a different story. 4 years of Chicago, he was easily one of their best players over that 4 year, no question. David Accam, welcome to the mountain. This last one was hard. I thought about Harry Shipp, the first real impactful homegrown signing. He wasn't there for long, didn't really perform well, but he was a really, I don't want to say like soft spot, but he made it so that fans would love him forever, and I respect that. I respect that a lot. Um, I thought about Jaleel Anibaba as well, but for the same reason, his performances weren't that great, and he's also bounced around a little bit. So I ended up on Johan Kappelhoff. He came in 2016 and solidified what could only be described as an awful Chicago backline. That's the only way I can put it. And we've talked about it already. He's been there for almost 200 appearances now and was a major reason why they performed in 2017 as the way they did because he was a staple in that back line. If you put some defensive talent around him, they brought in Francisco Calvo, which is a good touch, and they put Schweinsteiger and Daxi in front of him for a little bit. He's been good. He's been better, but he can't do everything on his own. So they need to help him on the wings and in goal. But that is my last one on there. No honorable mentions because it's Chicago.
Um, yeah, Sean Johnson was the first name on my list for Chicago. He's probably the most notable name for them throughout the decade, even if the second half of the decade was mainly at NYC. Um, I also have Nikolic. I think that he's probably been arguably their best attacking player during the decade, and it's been a short amount of time that he's been with them.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think they made the playoffs twice during the whole decade, and one of the times that they did make the playoffs was 2017 when he had his 24 or like whatever, however many goals it was. So it's hard to not include him. Also had Johan Kappelhoff on my team. Been with them since 2016. Played over 100 games for them. Started for them during one of their playoff runs. So then the only one other place that we differed, and finding a fourth was a little tough. And I probably went on a stretch for this one, but I went with Bashti. I went with
Oh, I
Schweini.
hate you.
I feel like he's arguably been the most talented player to play for them since Freddie Lundberg. I
All
think
right.
he was a key leader for them during their 2017 playoff run, and seeing as how that's one of like the two successful seasons they had during the decade, I think that his impact on that team when he came in was really important, and I like that he was versatile with them, playing the midfield, playing the back line. I feel like maybe he wasn't like the most talented player on the field at the time, but I still feel like he had a big influence on for them. And being like a worldwide known player coming to Chicago, I feel like that's also a big thing for them. I have honorable mentions again. I have David Accam on there. I have Harry Ship on there. And then I threw in one because I feel like had things gone differently, he would have been a shout for this list. But I put on Brandon Vincent also.
I knew you were going to, and I saw that name and I thought about it. I did,
Yeah,
but
if he was still around, I think I would have maybe done it, but because he retired, it's kind of hard to
imagine
put him on.
being imagine being so awful you make one of the best outside back talents in the entire country retire. Only Chicago.
Only Chicago. Weren't
Uh,
they also the team with Gutman too? That like lowballed him?
yeah, they lowballed Gutman too.
They got problems with outside backs.
They just have problems running a soccer team. But that's neither here nor there. Columbus. What
All
do you
right.
got?
Um, I'm actually making a last minute change to one of mine because I realized I doubled up on a player and I don't want to double up. So
Doubled up on a player already?
yeah, I didn't realize it, but because I had Parkhurst in there, but I'm gonna switch him because I was between him and someone else anyway. So,
All right,
I'll
start
start.
your list.
First name that I think has to be on this list for them is Federico Higuain. He's been with them since 2012, producing for them so often. He's been one of their best attacking players for so many years, even if he's not doing it as much anymore since he's a little bit older now. But he's been a star for them, even if he's still in like the shadow of his brother. I think he's been such a crucial part for them. Another name is Will Trapp. I think he's got to be on there. Playing with them since 2013. Always been a solid midfielder for them. He's been a great leader for them. I think his loss is really gonna. They're really gonna feel his loss this season now that he's not with them anymore. Um, then swapping out Parky, I'm gonna put in Chad Marshall for his
Yeah.
early. He was in there for the early years of the decade.
Let
Um,
me stop you right there and rip you apart for not even considering that Parkhurst would be above Marshall in this list. I literally, if I was in New York right now, I'd drive to your house and punch you.
Well, because I didn't start following the league until like the middle of the decade, and Marshall was
Doesn't
off
matter.
Marshall was off Columbus at that point, and Parkhurst I think was still there. So I remember Parkhurst being a part of Columbus, but I did not see any of Chad Marshall, so I don't really know how much of an influence he had with them. I only remember Chad Marshall for Seattle, so it was hard for me to like know that like Marshall, of course, is better or not.
Do you hear that, everybody? It's the sound of excuses flying out of his mouth. Continue.
Yeah, Chad Marshall. Um, I mean, he was in our list for all-time center backs. I think he was like the first name on everybody's list. Pretty
Ex-
self-explanatory.
Hence the reason I'm angry that you didn't even consider putting
Well,
him
I
on
had
here.
Parkhurst on my list
All
too
right,
for
all
all
right, all
time.
right. Go ahead. Continue, please.
Last one was a little tough for me. Um, I feel like you'll probably end up yelling at me for it too, because I feel like there's a couple names that could be thrown around. But I went with Merrim. I went with Justin Merrim. Um, and I said it's probably my inexperience in the league showing here, but I remember when I was first starting to follow the league, I remember him being a stud in Columbus. I remember him being fantastic for them, and then he went to Orlando and everything fell apart. But just from that memory of that I have him being like a dangerous winger for them, I went with him. And then honorable mentions, I had Harrison Affle, Steve Clark, and Ethan Finley.
Again, you you spent so much time trying to vouch for Zach Steffen to be a best goalkeeper in the decade if he stayed long enough. You're not even going to put him on your Mount Rushmore?
I just thought it was too short of a time period.
It doesn't matter. Everything that he did to get them where they were. I have three of the four there. I had Marshall, obviously, undisputed best center back in the decade. No, it's not even an argument. Higuain, again, no argument. Joined in 2012, best attacking player Columbus in the league had for a long time. 59 and 51. He's a member of the 50-50 club. Miram was the toughest one I had to choose, with 233 appearances, 43 assists, 43 and 34. He was again one of the better, if not underappreciated, wide players. But you're going to tell me Steve Clark had more of an impact on Columbus than Zach Steffen?
I don't remember how long Clark was there.
I mean, he was there long enough. He was there as long as Steffen was, probably, if not maybe a little longer. But Zach Steffen is the best goalkeeper men's national team has produced since Tim Howard.
How long was Stefan
And
with Columbus? Like
oh,
starting?
it all makes sense now. You're just getting back at him for knocking Atlanta out in penalties.
Oh yeah, of
Got it.
course.
Got it. Best GT. All right. I've made my points, but yeah, he was a huge reason why they got to the conference finals in 2017 and the semifinals in 2018, and then he left through halfway through 2019. I mean, if I keep going, I'm going to yell at you. So Zach Steffen over Will Trapp, because Will Trapp just sat there and let everybody else do the work for him. DC United. Nobody, because they were a bunch of bums. No, I'm just kidding. DC United's most successful period was between 2012 and 2015, with a first place and a second place finish in the East, semifinals and quarterfinals of MLS Cup, US Open Cup win, and 2 trips to the CONCACAF Champions League. So I focused on that time span, which means you're going to hear a lot of controversial picks in this one. Probably the least controversial of them all, Bill Hamid. No question, one of the most acrobatic and solid shot stoppers there are. I won't say he's one of the best goalkeepers in the game. We've had this argument already, and he is a great shot stopper, but will let you down when he forgets to focus. But yeah, the saves he makes to keep his team in big games is unreal. And yes, I'm talking about another one that he did to the Red Bull when I think it was Brian White nodded a corner kick across like 4 players. He didn't see it until it was like a yard off the line, and he goes full extension, tips it over the bar. Things like that. My next one, Dwayne De Rosario, played from 2012 to 2015, so he is a part of all the teams that made that list that I just mentioned earlier. 25 and 16 and 68 appearances, but this one is mainly because of the status and the way that he played. Darrow was easily considered one of the best midfielders of his time when he was playing. And after going to Toronto and San Jose, his status enough is to put him on here. But he's a star, and he was a main part of the team. He made everything work that went around him. So he's in there. Bobby Boswell is my next one. Part of the DCU squad from 2013 to 2017, 208 appearances, and he either started or appeared in every game, which meant that he was consistently healthy and consistently good for 200 games. Now, let me throw some numbers in there for you. He had a tackle success rate of 70% over his career, 2.5 interceptions a game, less than a foul per game committed, and 6 clearances a game for 200 games over 5 years. That's crazy even for the game back then when defending was notoriously poor. So again, Boswell is another really underrated defender, and I think he deserves a spot on this mountain. Oh, excuse me. And finally, my last one is Chris Pontius. No questions here. One of the best attackers for DC early in this decade. He had a 12-4 season in 2012 on their way to a second-place finish and a semifinal appearance in MLS Cup. He had a 7-6 year in 2011 before that, 37-23 in 182 games for DCU. And for me, it was a toss-up between him and Fabian Espindola. And I think his extended time with the club and higher goal tally just from being there, and from being there for the start of his career instead of being a journeyman like Espindola, gives him the edge. I already know you're going to put Luciano Acosta on here, and I'm going to tell you to stop it right now because Pontius put up better numbers than him and had less games to do it. I'll get the numbers for you while you give me your list, but go ahead and tell me why you have Acosta in your team so I can tell you you're wrong.
You know me so well. Well, you said the same thing about Miggy, where it's not always all about the numbers. So, and of course I'm
You're
gonna
right, but
pick.
Luciano Acosta didn't bring anything else. Go ahead.
He's one of the again. It's probably because I've been following for a less amount of time, but I remember. Of course, I'm gonna remember more of Luciano Acosta at DC United than I do Chris Pontius. Um, I also had Bill Hamid. I also had
Good,
Bobby Boswell,
good.
and I can't wait for your blood to boil when I pick this one. You think you could guess it?
No, I don't think I can.
No?
I probably can, but I'm not going to. Oh,
Yeah.
oh. Please say Paul Areola.
No, no, I didn't pick Paul Arriola.
I was about to say, if you said Paul Areola, I'm hanging up.
I picked Perry Kitchen.
All right.
Um,
Okay.
he
I'm
played for
okay
them
with
for
that.
like half the decade. He was one of like the first young stars that I remember from MLS going overseas to Europe. And I'm assuming if he I don't remember him playing a ton, but I remember him getting the hype when he was young and at DC, and I think he played during that era when they were successful. And he was a young guy too, so I'm sure um, he was still growing while he was playing, even if he wasn't at his best. But I know nowadays he's not nearly the player people expected him to be. But yeah, that was my only other one, other than Lucci also.
I'm okay with that, and I was very torn between putting Darrow in there or putting Espindola back in there because I think Darrow was around too many different places to be like considered a one team Mount Rushmore. But that's just me. So here's my argument against your Lucci pick.
Okay.
He was at DC United from 2016 to 2019, and we'll cut out the 2019 because he didn't play. So 2016 to 2017, 2018. DC got to the knockout round of the playoffs and lost, missed the playoffs, and then lost in the knockout round again. Finished fourth in the East, 11th in the East, fourth in the East. He put up numbers that looked like 18 goals and 18 goals, doesn't have the assist numbers on Wikipedia right now, but 18 goals in over 90 games. That doesn't do it for me. That doesn't make you a star. And you're right about the play doesn't naturally, or the numbers don't determine the player, but the way that DC United finished their seasons, losing in the first round or not even getting a bye or not even making it, doesn't tell me that he was an impactful player without the stats. Does that make sense?
So I pulled up who scored for DC for Lucci, and
Okay.
he during his time with DC, he all over from 2016 to 2019, he had an average rating of a 7 on who scored, which I
Mm-hmm.
feel like is very solid. He had one standout year, and then the other in terms of numbers, he had one standout year in 2018 where he had 10 goals and 15 assists. That was probably his best season, I would say. And that was, I think,
Yeah.
the season, I think right after that when PSG were possibly going for him, right?
I can't believe they didn't get that. But
Yeah.
yes, you're right.
I feel
Continue.
like you have to be a talented player if PSG want you.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing that he's not a talented player. What I'm saying, all right, so I got updated numbers here because I think Wikipedia was off. He had 21 goals and 20 assists, or 25 goals, 29 assists. There we go. In 137 games. So I get that his rating was good. It's where his team finished. His team didn't get past the first round of the playoffs. You can't tell me that's an influential player. Miggy Almiron can make his team go win a game. Lucci couldn't.
Well,
Dwayne De
during how
Rosario
much
can
how
make
much
his
was
team win a game.
Pontius pushing them ahead? Was it all him or was it other people? Was it Bill Hamid? Was it
Chris
Bobby
Pontius was their
Boswell?
leading. So Chris Pontius was their leading goal scorer in excuse me 2012 when they came in second and got to the semifinals of MLS Cup. And he worked next to Espindola when they finished first and got to the quarterfinals of MLS Cup. So they both played more influential roles than Lucio Costa did.
The quarterfinals is what one win ahead of the knockouts.
Farther than Lucci made it,
If they had a bye, then they won the same amount of games that Lucci won.
fair, but they still made it farther. Lucci also was the top goal scorer when they finished
I would still argue
11th.
that Pontius had a better team around him than Lucci did.
Also fair. But at the same time, what I'm saying is, if you put Miguel Almiron on the DC United team that Lucci was on, DC United makes playoffs.
Yeah, but they're not going to do anything in the playoffs. And Lucci made the playoffs twice.
Yeah, what I'm saying is he didn't do enough for me to say that he is an impact player because his numbers don't say that he was fantastic. He had one good year. That doesn't do it for me to get on my Mount Rushmore. It just doesn't do it.
I pulled up Pontius on Who Scored also. Who Scored only, I think, goes back to 2013, so I don't know his stuff
Yeah,
before
that's
that.
why I didn't use who scored.
But on Who Scored for Pontius during his from 2013 to 2015 with DC, he averaged. I mean, I don't have the exact average because he has other seasons that will skew it, but it's looking like it's around like a 6-7, and he had 7 goals and 3 assists during that time. In one season, he played 5 games for them.
Yes, that was when he was on his way out. So when he played for DC
When did he first join DC?
early, it was like early in the decade, but he had 32 and 19 in 152. That's basically the same numbers that Lucci put up.
Uh-huh.
They're the same player, and
Yeah, well then I'm
Lucci
gonna
couldn't make
pick the
playoffs.
one that I got to watch play.
Fine, I'll give it to you. I want to talk about FCC because we all love a good bit of FCC.
Yeah,
Good
why
argument. That
don't
was a
why
good
don't
good
why don't you
conversation.
take over the FCC one? Because I didn't make a list for them because it's only been a season and their season was barely a season.
I have little notes about each team when I was going to talk about them. One year, one very bad year. Who gets on this one? Let's keep it short and sweet. Alan
Uh-huh.
Cruz, most MLS goals scored. Ledesma, biggest name from the USL days. Watson, captain. Bertone, first MLS goal.
Yeah, I
Let's move
think I
on.
would. I pulled up the stats for FCC. I think that's exactly what I was gonna put too.
Let's go on because you're
All
right.
right.
There's not much to talk about, but
Yeah, it's
I
just
saw
it's
that.
really
All right,
short and nothing's been
can we
successful.
can we talk about the fact? Can we talk about the fact that Extra Time Radio, when they did this for FCC, put on Andrew Gutman, who played like 15 games for them.
Andrew Cutman.
Yeah, hold on. I'm gonna look it up real quick before we move
Oh
on.
man. Did he
Kendall
how
Watson,
many of those
Andrew
games were
Gutman.
how many of those games were as a sub too?
Their Mount Rushmore, as decided by Matt Doyle, which hurts me because I actually like Matt Doyle, is Jurgen Locadia, Andrew Gutman, Frankie Amaya, and Alan Cruz.
Oh my God. Frankie Amaya?
Goodness me.
And
Goodness
Locadia's
me.
played what, 2 games for them?
Sam Stejko, I don't know how to pronounce that name, but Sam Stejko quoted it and said, "You should have put Joe Burrow on there, you cowards."
Oh my
That's what I'm
God.
talking about. It's just so. Listen, we might not be spot on, but we're not that wrong.
Oh, I hope we're not that wrong. Maybe we are to some people.
Please let us know if you think we're wrong and tell us why Joe Burrow should be on that because he's got as much business being on there as Jurgen Locadia.
When they made that, Burrow wasn't even officially in Cincinnati
I
yet,
know.
and he still made the Mount Rushmore.
Unreal. Hit me with a
Montreal?
little bit of Montreal.
All right. One name, no argument. I dare you to argue with me on it. Ignacio Piatti has to be on this
No,
list.
you're good.
Yeah, of course. He has to be. He's been one of the most talented players in MLS, period.
Period.
And
Yep.
hasn't been a great Montreal team over the decade, so he's probably been their best player by far. Um, I also put Evan Bush on there. I know you love your
Yep.
goalkeepers.
Yep. Good
He
shout.
he's been with them for years, and he led them to 2 playoff runs in 2015 and 2016. I don't remember how many times they made it the playoffs during this decade. I didn't write it down, but I can't imagine it was too many times. But he's always been an option for them, even if he's not starting now. But when I think Evan Bush, I always associate him with Montreal, and I think he deserves to be on their Mount Rushmore. Another name that I always associate with Montreal, and I know he's not there anymore, but I put Lawrence Simon on there.
Okay.
Um, he's one of the best center backs in the league that I can remember, and I remember early on he was a big part of that Montreal defense. that's where I remember him the best. I think it's a fair shot to put him on there. And then my last one is more from the beginning part of the decade. So I didn't see him play, but I'm going based off of some of the stats that I saw on him. But I went with Marco Di Vaio.
Okay.
He had a short stint with Montreal during the decade, but he racked up a lot of goals for them. He had a long history with like a lot of great teams before he came to Montreal. I think he played for like Juventus, Monaco. So he was definitely like a quality player during his career. He kind of reminds me a bit of David Villa, like coming in at an older age with a bit of history and scoring a bunch of goals here towards the end of his career. He led them to the playoffs in 2013. So, and I think when I was doing a little bit of research on what other Montreal fans were saying, I think a couple of people were throwing his name around for the Rushmore also. And then I had some honorable mentions as well. I put Felipe Martins for the honorable mention from his early years when he was very young. It looked like he was putting up some good numbers for them. Patrice Bernier and Didier Drogba.
So I'm going to let you off on the Bernier because you never saw him play. Patrick Bernier is the easiest choice to put on this Mount Rushmore. He was the heart, soul, and blood of Montreal in the early part of this decade. When you
Yeah.
thought of Montreal, you thought of Patrice Bernier because of the way he bled Montreal blue. And I don't know if you saw the video that had come out during the early parts of quarantine where his kids recreated his Canadian championship goal. But when that goal went in, the entire area of Montreal probably registered an earthquake. That's how much he meant to that team. When you talk to anybody about their favorite Montreal player, it's Bernier and Piatti. It's no question. And I'll let you off because he was gone before you came in. But
Yeah. And
Bernier
when I
is
was looking at his numbers, they didn't look fantastic. So that's all I have to go
he was
off.
so he I know, and that's why I'm letting you off because he was a center defensive mid. He was the enforcer.
Got
So he
it.
doesn't have great numbers, but he was the captain, the heart, the blood, the soul, the player you want to go play for. Um, I also had Bush in there, no brainer, most appearances. Um, on a per season basis, makes the most saves of any goalkeeper in the league, or he's at least top three. Never really revered as one of the best goalkeepers in the league, but he's a strong shot stopper, and his longevity at the club makes that easy. Piatti, not even going to go into
Mhm.
it. And quarantine got to me when I was writing this, and I put Didier Drogba on here, which hurts me. I hated that I put this kid on here,
This kid.
but
He's like
yeah,
in his
but
40s.
for the same reason I put Dayro in DC. He had a good goals to appearance ratio, 23 and 41. Um, I'm really not proud that I put him on there. I also had DeVio kind of up in the air, um, but I figured that Drogba brought more of a presence to Montreal and helped make the game kind of big over there. Bigger. It was always big, but bigger because it's Didier Drogba.
Mhm.
And I know Adam would be going crazy of us thinking, not even thinking of putting on him on here. But DeVio for me was exactly how you described him. He was the David Villa coming here, big name, big stature. Um, the only reason I remember him is that dude was offside 9 times again. He was one of those I'm going to toe the line, and if I'm good, I'm good. If I'm not, I'm not. Bro, that dude would have kicked the VAR machine first game of the season. So they would have called back every one of his goals. But that was the type of player he was, and I really enjoyed watching him play. He just was. I don't want to say lazy, but he was one of those players where he came in and was like, "I'm gonna literally sit on this last defender. If I can break in, I'm gonna break in. If not, whatever." So I liked him, but he just didn't do it for me. So I said Drogba. Oh, that hurt. That hurt
I
me.
think I would still keep Drogba out, but I'd maybe switch after hearing about you talk about Bernier. I'd probably switch him in for Marco.
Yeah. Who was your other one? Who was the last one?
Simon.
Yeah, I had Simon floating up there too. I thought that he. I don't know. I feel like I don't.
Maybe he didn't
I
play
don't
with
know.
them long enough. I don't know.
I think he did. It's just Montreal only came in 2013 or 2012, right? So, um, if he was gone by what 2015 or 2016, it's enough. But they didn't really do a lot, right? They won a few Canadian championships. Um,
I always remember him
I guess
being really good for them, though.
I guess the big thing is making it to the Champions League final, right? 2014.
Hmm.
I would be inclined to allow Drogba out for Simon because they made it to the Champions League final. Yep, I'm okay with that.
All right,
New England.
New England.
This is me.
This is you.
This was really hard. I didn't like doing this one.
I feel like you're gonna
They
yell at me a
had
lot on
like
this one.
no, I'm not because they had like seven guys with over 250 appearances. Like, how do you tell anybody from there that they're just like, nah, you're not good enough? But I started with Chris Tierney, most apps ever, 277 appearances, scored 16, had 32 assists from left back. That was a little bit; those numbers are a little bit fluctuated because he started a 2008 draft and was there until he retired last year. You know, this faithful servant is what I'll basically describe him as. He's got a third place and a second place finish in the East, runner up in MLS Cup and U.S. Open Cup, four playoffs, very solid career, very underlooked because he's not in today's media, very underlooked because he was never the out. They didn't play with attacking outside backs, so his numbers don't stand out as like, whoa, look at this guy, or his touches in the final third aren't great, but Tierney, I always remember when Red Bull would go up against him, was like, stay to the other side of him because that dude is going to shut down whoever we have going on the wing. Moving into the Academy kid, literally, Diego Fagundes. 2010, he was drafted or rather signed, excuse me, and he's been there ever since. He lit up the scene in the early parts of the decade for being so young, and then everything kind of caught up around him. However, he's still got 261 appearances. I think he's only like 26 too, which is crazy. He's got 53 and 42, so he's closing in on that 50-50 mark. 13 and 5 in 2013, 7 and 9 in 2017, 9 and 8 in 2018. Consistently puts up good attacking numbers, and I think earns his spot here as being one of the mainstays here. I also have Andrew Farrell, which was one of my tougher ones. I was floating between him. Um, who was a Scott Caldwell was another one I had in here, who was another one who just played forever. Center defensive mid, numbers aren't great. But I put Farrell in there because he played everywhere on the back line to try and plug any gap there was. Caldwell did the same, but Farrell kind of stands out more because of the way that he did it. He's super fast, super strong. Doesn't score, doesn't get a lot of assists, but he's this stay-at-home outside back who's going to say, come on, come attack me, and I'm going to crunch you. I like a good defender like that, and I think Farrell has done a really good job. 240 appearances, not a lot of stuff in terms of stats, but consistently one of the first names on the name sheet for whatever coach comes in. They've had a whole slew of them come in there. Just a true professional, help New England remain somewhat relevant in the times of big players, skillful wingers, and big money signings. And then my last one, Lee Win. Oh, where would New England be if they didn't piss off Lee Win? 208 appearances, 54 goals after joining in 2012. Really, they needed that change of pace. Fagundes is too young to make a real difference, so they bring in this guy who lights it up. Finished in 2013, they go third. 2014, they go second in the East. They keep getting better. He's getting U.S. men's national team call-ups, always being compared to amazing center mids like Question when he was at Red Bull or Higuain when he was at Columbus. And then New England decided to play hardball and piss him off. Second most goals in club history, and you're going to end it like that. Such a shame, but Miami's got a good one, but I can't imagine where New England would be if they didn't piss that kid off. He was so good. I remember watching him, and it was like, there are players that you look at, you're like, all right, we got to watch this guy. Lee Win was one of those guys.
I think one of my earliest memories from MLS is when you came over to my house to watch Red Bull play in the playoffs against New England. And I think it was back when, I don't remember what year it was. Maybe it was 2015. I don't remember what year. But I remember Lee Win being like a huge part of that team that took down Red Bull.
Yep.
So I had three of the four that you had. I only had one different.
Good.
I had Lee Win, I had Andrew Farrell, I had Chris Tierney, but I did not put Diego Fagundes in. He is an honorable mention, but I didn't put him in.
Okay.
I went with Bobby Shuttleworth instead.
Oh, no.
What do you mean
No.
no?
If you're going to pick any goalkeeper from that team, you pick Matt Reese. And Matt Reese isn't there long enough to do it. But
I put Matt Reese as an honorable mention just because he was there in the early part of the decade, but it was the tail end of his career.
yep.
The reason I
Yep.
went with Shuttle Bobby is because, he was there for many years and he was there all 3 years when they made their playoff runs in 2013, 14, and 15, and he was the goalkeeper for them. Um, I know Matt Reese is more history with him, but it was just like not it wasn't the prime of his career during the 2010s.
So here's what
Um,
I'll say. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. I'll finish after.
Matt Reese was my all-time forever first favorite goalkeeper in MLS. I
Uh-huh.
watched Matt Reese play against Red Bulls, and I said, I am a huge fan of the way this guy plays because he was a shorter-ish goal for goalkeepers in pro game, and he played a lot like the way I played. So I was like, all right, this is one of my favorite guys, which is why it hurts me that if you're going to pick a goalkeeper at all from this team, it wasn't my boy Matt Reese. However, I also enjoyed Bobby Shuttleworth's style of play, but I just don't think he's not the level of Luis Robles, Stefan Fry, Brad Guzan when they made their teams win games. He never made saves like that, or at least I don't remember them. So I get that he was a part of the team, but it's almost like he was just that.
I don't I think he could arguably have done more for them to earn a spot on there than Diego Fagundes. Just because I feel
I
like Fagundes has kind of, it seems like, simmered out a bit.
I completely disagree with you, but that's okay because I don't want to yell at you over this.
I had
Um,
one other honorable mention that I had was Shalry Joseph. Same reason as Matt Reese, just later
yep,
part of his career in the early part of the decade. But I know he was like a
yeah,
super player for them.
yeah. No, he was. Shalry Joseph was the guy, but he only came back for the last year or two. So tough to put him in here for the decade. But I think if we did a full like in their history, yeah, I think so. Excuse me. Um,
Here we go.
what say you about NYC?
All right, I forgot we're doing NYC first. Um, there's not a ton of history, so there's not a ton of
Yeah,
people you could choose from. I think two people you have to have on here: David Villa, Maxi Morales. They are their two most well-known superstars. Obviously, David Villa is a world-class superstar, one of the best in history. But he was so good for them too. Like he won MVP. He was just so great. He was a great striker for them when he came here, even in his older age. And Maxi is one of the best playmakers in the league by far. Um, he's just so good for them every year. I don't think I have to make too much of a case for them to be on there. I also went with Alex Ring. I think that he's one of their better midfielders. He's been with them for a few years. And then my last one, which is probably where we have differences, I went with Patrick Vieira just because I feel
we
like
have
he.
differences because I didn't remember to include coaches in here, but I
Okay.
like the I like it. I really
Yeah,
do.
I think Vieira was really good for them. I think he had them
Yep.
playing great. He had them playing great, and then I mean, I feel like you could see the effect when he left. It just wasn't the same anymore, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he's got to have some credit for that.
Um. So we only have two that are the same
Okay.
in David Villa and the ringleader. David Villa, no comment. We've already talked about him. Ringleader, the captain. Listen, when you're playing center defensive mid on a U13 pitch, it's not difficult to do what he does.
Mm-hmm.
But see, Adam's not here to jump in on these, so yeah, you gotta feed me here. But
Ha
um,
ha ha
listen,
ha ha ha
there
ha.
you go. Yeah, this dude was a true leader, right? The guy that you look at and you're like, I want to play for this guy. Like, I will do whatever it takes to win for this guy. Um, and yes, he's also a good player, right? He can go up and down. Doesn't matter where he's playing on, you know, at the baseball diamond or on an actual field. Like he does a good job. So there's no question there. Put Anton Tinnerholm, easily one of the best outside backs in the league. It was between him and Kamar Lawrence for best just general outside back ever. The way that he goes up and down. Excuse me. The way that he goes up and down. The way that he is a solid defender, hits shots like they're hit out of a cannon. You know, sticks tackles harder than anybody on the pitch. Loves to get into these little scraps. Really good. He's just a good New York player. You look at a New York player, he fits that mold. He's been the best player in that back line since he showed up, and I think he thoroughly deserves that spot. And you're either going to need to tell me more about Maxi Morales or tell me why you didn't put Sean Johnson in here. Because if you need me to explain more about why I have Sean Johnson on this team, go watch some Josh Saunders NYCFC clips. That's all I have to say.
Do you want me to tell you why Sean Johnson's not on my team?
Yeah.
Because I picked Sean Johnson for the Chicago team.
Who said he can't be there both?
I didn't want to double up.
It's fair, but I think when a team has been here for 4 years, 5 years, however long they've been here, it's tough to find somebody. But the massive change between Saunders and Johnson, it's almost like if they still had Johnson, they are nowhere near as good as they are today.
I think Johnson's good for them. I think the jump is because of how bad Saunders was for them.
Well, that's what I mean. If Saunders was still here, did I say if Johnson was still here? I meant if Saunders was still here, they still haven't made the playoffs.
I don't know. Maxi's been here for a few years now, and I think the offense just revolves around him, and I just feel like he's been a really good player for them. And I thought about Tinnerholm. I do think Tinnerholm's super talented, but it's been like a really short amount of time that he's been there, hasn't it?
I think he's been there since the second year.
Was it? I didn't think it was the second. I thought he was here since like 2018.
Let me check real quick.
Yeah, I'm looking that up. 2018 is when he got here.
Did he really? Wow.
Yeah.
I thought he'd been here a lot longer than that. But anyways, I still think that he fits here, just the way that he's played. But I now with that information, I don't mind you putting Maxi over Anton. I thought Anton was here a lot longer, which is why I was like, but no, that's fair.
If you thought to put coaches, would you have put Vieira on there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
The change between Kreis and Vieira was unreal.
Mm-hmm.
Because realistically, I mean, you had a few changes, but for the most part, you had the same core guys. So he made them just play better. So yeah, absolutely.
Got it. All right, let's go. I'm ready. I'm ready to get yelled at.
Let's move on to the best club in MLS history. Yeah. This is an easy one. This is an easy one, and I know you're going to have maybe one different.
Oh, we'll see.
Luis Robles, Iron Man, save of the years. Many people's honorable mention for goalkeeper of the decade. Done. BWP, GOAT. Red Bull top goal scorer, most goals in a season at one point, fastest player to 100 goals. Done. Dax McCarty, best captain in RBNY history, at least since I've been watching. Did all the dirty work nobody wanted to do. Really good defensive mid. Great distributor of the football. Really great leader. Not much that you didn't love about him. Thierry Henry. GOAT. All-time, forever, best player who's ever stepped on an MLS pitch. And that's not up for argument. Everything that he did was effortless between scoring direct off corners, turns, touches, finishes, running at players. I literally cannot think of anybody. I know I said this before. I cannot think of anybody in this league who has made it look as effortless as Thierry Henry has. I don't think Carlos Vela is on his level. I think it goes Henry, Vela, and then I don't care who else you put there. Nobody made it look as easy as Thierry did.
Well, I would probably agree with you that nobody's been as talented as Henry has been to play in MLS. Like, Vela may put up better numbers, but he's not nearly the player Henry was.
And like I said, I'm not talking numbers. I'm just saying who made it look easy. If Henry put the work ethic that Carlos Vela did, Henry would have Vela numbers. Henry didn't care. Henry did this.
It was the end of the career.
in his free time. Yeah, in his free, he's like, oh, I'll just go play a quick game of footy, and then would just do ridiculous things. Easily one of my favorite players of all time. And I wish we could find somebody. I don't care how much money we have to spend. I wish we could find somebody who could do it like that.
Maybe someday, eventually.
All right, hit me.
I had one difference from you,
I
and
figured you might.
I feel like you might give me a hard time about it,
Okay.
but so I have Robles, I have BWP, I have Henri as well. I did not put Dax though. I have Dax as an honorable mention, but I didn't put Dax. I went with Jesse Marsh instead.
I knew. See, again, I don't have an issue with that because if I was thinking coaches, he'd be there too.
Yeah, I mean he was I think in charge for 4 seasons, 3 of which you finished top of the East, all of which were in the playoffs, 2 supporter shields, and he got a well-deserved move to coach in Europe now, where he's also killing it.
It would be
He's
great
a
if he could come
fantastic
back.
coach. I
It'd be
mean,
great if he could
you
come
could
back.
see the difference now with how much you guys complain about Chris Armas
I
versus like
love
when you
Chris. He's
had
a good
just
dude, but he makes some decisions, man, that are like, ooh, okay,
yeah.
that's how we're going, huh? All right,
Yeah,
cool.
so Dax was a
Um,
little. I had a couple other honorable mentions too. I put Kamar Lawrence as another honorable mention. I feel like he definitely
I'm okay
deserves
with
a
that.
shout, possibly, because he was so good for them for a few years. And then I also had Sasha in there too, Sasha Question.
Yep.
I don't think he
Yeah,
would
I
make
mean,
it, but I think he's an honorable mention.
absolutely. I mean, listen, and I don't, and it'll sound kind of homery. We genuinely had one of the best teams in the decade that didn't change. Our team, for the most part, year in and year out, came back exactly the same unless somebody retired. So I need to get a glass of water soon. Gosh.
Which I feel like is rare
Um,
nowadays.
yeah, which is extremely rare. But that's why we were so good, is because we kept coming back with the same players, the same play style, and the same ideas to go at them. And you can flip a ton of people in there. You could put Kamar in there. You could put Sasha in there. You could put Mike. You could probably put Tim Cahill in there. I wouldn't. You could put him as an honorable mention, I think. But just players like that would constantly come in. You could put Joel Impair in there, but he kind of left a few years in. You could put Lloyd Sam in there. You could put so many different players because there was just literally it was like 4 or 5 years straight of just ass kicking from the same players and nobody could figure it out. I miss those days. Let's move on to Orlando so I can keep having more fun.
Oh God.
Nobody, right?
Oh, there were like tears coming from my face trying to make a list for Orlando.
Uh,
Um,
go go ahead. I'll make you do this because I'm interested.
I had Kaká because he's Kaká, Kyle Laren because he was a great striker for them, even if things were a mess at the end. Um, Nani because he's probably their only good player now, and then the last one was almost just a pity one, but I went with Joe Bendick just because he was willing to play in front of that defense for 3 years. Or I mean, behind the defense.
I have three of the four, so yeah, I got Kaká as well. He brought relevancy to a team that frankly never just had it. Nobody cared about Orlando until Kaká came in. They missed out on Chicharito when he was actually good, so this is their replacement.
Uh-huh.
Kaká was good for the same reason Thierry Henry was good. He was just purely more talented than anybody who went up against him.
Yeah.
But it was so late in his career that his numbers look like garbage.
Mhm.
Um, Love the guy. Big fan of AC Milan when I was a kid. So um,
Yeah, can't hate
love
Kaká.
him from his. Yeah, no. And again, you're right. Yeah, you can't unless you're an Inter fan. I also have Kyle Larin. Ruined his career in Turkey, but he was a superstar when Orlando had him, and they still haven't replaced him. And that's the crazy part, right? You sold him for
Yeah.
however much money, and you still haven't replaced him. Top goal scorer in club history. Double-digit goals every year he was there. Yeah, just really no arguments there. Also had Joe Bendick because of the way that he kept them in so many games. Hashtag Joe knows.
Joe knows.
Um, that I think that was the most sent phrase in our group chat to Jason when he was following Orlando.
Yeah.
Um, Second most appearances ever, kept Orlando in the playoff chase for like a week and a half until Orlando gave up. But he had a ton of save of the weeks. He's a great goalkeeper, and I actually like him as a goalkeeper. He was just one of those like come at me, I dare you type of guys. I also put Christian Aguitha, most appearances
Yeah.
in club history, enforcer. He makes this list. He spent 5 years. He finally left, but he spent 5 years trying to clean up the midfield mess with Will Johnson next to him.
Yeah.
He makes this list because there's literally nobody else.
Yeah. I had him as an honorable mention. I was close to putting him on, but I went with Nani instead.
Yeah, Nani wasn't here long enough, and he's not good enough. I'm just kidding. He's good enough, but he hasn't been here long enough.
Yeah, well,
Um,
gotta find somebody. All right,
yeah,
you want to do Philly?
let's go to Philly. Why
Let's
not?
do it. Let's go.
Let's start with the obvious. Andre Blake.
Surprise.
New Union Union made the playoffs for the first time in 2016 after 5 years of missing it. Blake didn't start playing until 2016. Coincidence? I think not.
I think not.
Performances in goal, big reflex saves, and you saw he when they don't have him, they don't play well. So he's an influential in the turnaround of Philadelphia, and he joins the Mountain. All right, let's go to the kind of out there ones.
Okay.
MLS is Olivier Giroud, aka Sebastian Letou, one of my favorite strikers, just because he was one of those guys who like he wasn't super fast or skillful, but he always scored, man. He has 53 goals in 189 games, leading goal scorer for Philly ever, and that's by 15 goals. He hasn't played since 2016. Um, he was there for 2 years, two spells, 2010 to 2012 and 2016 to 2013. So you got to have the big guy in there. I also have Raymond Gaddis, just for longevity and consistency. He has 231 appearances and played in almost every game since 2012. Um, and he is literally always on the team sheet. Been through the highs and lows of Philly. Um, the playoffs 3 years since 2012, but he's been through it all. Helped them go far in USOC, where they finished runner-up 3 times and beat the Red Bulls every year, but that's okay. And then the last one I have there is Ilsinho, because he's just this influential off the bench guy, and I couldn't bring myself to put like CJ Sapong on there. I couldn't bring myself to put like Alejandro Bedoya in there, and I'll explain that in a second. But you have this guy who is literally never played a full 90 in his life. I'm convinced he's never played a full 90 in his life. He has the work rate of me when I had a dislocated shoulder, and he just never was a guy that you looked at was like, oh yeah, this guy's gonna be a star. But he always scored a goal when you need it. And yes, I'm talking about when he shredded us in regular season and in playoffs last year. But he has 19 and 15 in 114, but in 114 games. But he has never made more than 2,000 minutes in a year. I think he has a total like 5,000 minutes in the entire, like that's 2 seasons worth of playing total if he played every minute of every game. Um, he only joined in 2016, and 19 and 15 and 114 is the same number of assists and more goals than Alejandro Bedoya in half the minutes. So I couldn't put him on there. I had to put in Ilsinho, which hurt me because he ruined my team.
We were so close to finally having the same Mount Rushmore, and then you ruined it.
I'm sure I did. But we'll talk about who you put in, and we'll talk about it.
Andre Blake obviously
Yeah.
doesn't need an explanation. I mean, just watch him play in that 3-3 LAFC game. He was
Yep.
outstanding. Sebastian Letou as well.
Love that guy.
I never saw him play, but when I was
Yeah,
looking
he
at the
was
numbers, he was their guy.
he was on Red Bull before he went back to Philly, so
Did not know that.
saw him play a little bit.
Okay. Also picked Ray Gaddis. Been there since 2012. It's just been he is Philly. He's been
Yeah,
Philly for 8 years now.
I remember. I remember my first ever FIFA Ultimate Pack had Ray Gaddis in it,
Okay.
and I think that was in like well, not my first ever, but my pack from the earliest FIFA. So my first ever Ultimate Team was 15, but I went back to like FIFA 11 and opened FIFA 12 and opened a pack, and Ray Gaddis was in there.
There you go. Our only difference, I did not go with Ilsinho. I went with CJ Sapong.
Okay, I don't disagree. It's just I couldn't bring myself to put him in there when he was
I know
like
he
the number
someone else
two.
probably deserves to be there, but I just couldn't find someone else to be there. Maybe
Yeah.
Keegan Rosenberry if he stayed there the whole time.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Keegan was solid, but he had to bounce.
Yeah. Now he's on Adam's favorite West Coast team.
Yeah. All right. Let's go ahead and wrap this up with one of the easiest teams here.
Oh God, are you're gonna start it like that?
Go ahead. Don't mess us up.
Oh God, the pressure's on. I'm totally gonna have a different one than you because
You're gonna have what?
I left out one name and I think you definitely didn't.
All right.
Um,
Listen.
yeah.
Go ahead.
All
Just say
right.
your names.
Sebastian Giovinco.
Oh, good.
Um, yeah, and he was phenomenal. Best player in the league for the time that he was here. It's a
Can I,
shame.
I just don't mean to cut you off, but the best striker in the league. I know, Adam, you'll be listening, so I want you to listen very closely to when I say he was the best striker in the league.
I don't care what position he played, he was the best player. He was so good. He was so electric. He was so fun to watch. It's such a disappointment that he left. But yeah, he's got to be on here. As much as it hurts me to say it, Michael Bradley, he's on here.
Yep.
You know, been here for years. He is a quality midfielder, and he has been for them. He controls a lot of what they do.
I
He's a
can
good
hear the
leader.
pain in your voice, and it makes me so happy.
Yeah, just watching him play with the men's national team lately makes me sad to put him on
Yep.
here. But he deserves it. He deserves to be on here. He's been a good leader for them. I went with. I feel like these last two maybe are where we could differ. I went with Justin Morrow. He's been a starting defender for them since 2014. He's won both championships with the team. He's always been a solid defender for them. I already know you're preparing your arguments against it, but I went with him. And then my last one, I went with Jonathan Osorio.
Oh my
He,
God, Connor, are you kidding? We almost
what?
had it again, and you picked. Oh,
I
oh.
already know. What you have Josie in there, don't you?
Of course I have Josie in there. It's a big three.
No.
It's like putting a Miami Heat Mount Rushmore and having LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and not Chris Bosh. Like, what are you thinking?
Osorio's been there since 2013. He's still
I
there
don't
today.
care.
He's been playing
I
for them
just
through
don't
countless
care.
playoff runs and championships. And I feel like Josie's been very overhyped at Toronto. I was looking at some of his numbers and it doesn't seem like he scores a lot. And he's a striker.
It's because he's hurt. But when he plays, he's phenomenal.
I'm looking it
Name
up. Hold
one
on.
defender who's ever stopped Josie. Name one defender.
Anybody that plays the U.S. men's national team.
I. That's a good one. But in MLS play, he is unstoppable. He's got a good first touch. He's got good size. He's got good speed. He can find the back of the net. Him and Gio were unstoppable. And you're going to put Jonathan Osorio there?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Connor, you give me pain. You give me so much pain. All right, let me. I agree with Giovinco. Simply the best player for maybe 2 years. Definitely in 2017, maybe 2018 or 2018 as well. Yeah, 83 goals in 142 games, 51 assists with that. I wonder where most of those assists went to. Oh, that's right. The other striker he played with. Yeah, not Jonathan Osorio. Michael Bradley. It pained me to say it, but him and oh, that's right. Osorio didn't even play next to him. Marky Delgado played next to him when they went in the treble. So he even picked the wrong center mid, the wrong second center mid. Oh.
Fine. I will change it to
Anyways.
Josie then.
No, don't change it. You can't change it because I'm yelling at you. You have to accept me yelling at
I'm
you.
looking up Josie's stats on who scored.
Um,
What was I looking at? When I was looking
he
at
was.
his stuff, it was like 12 goals was the highest I saw.
I don't know. But anyways, Bradley was a great number 8. He could pick up the ball and distribute it out to Giovinco and let Giovinco do all the work. Justin Morrow, I agree with, best left back in the team of the decade, so we have to really include him here. But he changed that role of the attacking fullback and was a massive part of that treble-winning side. But I cannot believe you left Josie Altidore out here. Second leading goal scorer in club history. Would have been the first if he was healthy completely. If we look at Transfer Market, which has much more in-depth stats than who scored. Josie, come on. Stats all season. He had 11 and 8 last year. 7 goals in 2018, where he only played 13 games because he was hurt. 15 and 7 in 2017, and then 10 and 4 in 2016. 13 goals in 2015. What part of that tells you that he's not the best striker with Giovinco? What part of that do you see and you're like,
Because I watch Josef Martinez and Carlos Vela score 30 in a season, and then Josie gets half of that and is highest.
Yes, but look at who he's playing with. He had Giovinco taking all the goals from him.
He also had Giovinco helping him get chances.
Yeah, but let's see. Carlos Vela and Josef Martinez. What are the 2 parts of them that differ from Josie Altidore?
Here we go. I already know what you're gonna say.
When Giovinco was there, what is the one thing that they did that Giovinco never did, or that Josie Altidore never did?
How many could they possibly have per season?
Josie never took penalties. Game over. You're wrong, I'm right. And on that note, thanks for joining us for another fun-filled episode of the Designated Players Podcast, where we have tons of great arguments and conversation. As you know, I'm always right, so we'll be posting pictures of our Mount Rushmore as our clips go out, and they will only be mine because Connor has been wrong every time. So, no, I'm just kidding. Guys, thanks a lot for making it this far. I hope you enjoyed. This was a lot of fun for us, and I'm very excited to do the West because we're going to have some more good conversation, I'm sure. Make sure you follow us on all our social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Make sure you go ahead and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts so you can be told when we have a new episode out. And other than that, guys, thanks a lot. Connor, you got any parting words? Any apologies you want to make?
I'm just doing some math right now. I'm looking at games played for Osorio and Altidore.
Goodness. Let me help you out.
Hold on. Having some technical difficulties.
Not surprised.
So Osorio has played 197 games, started 153. And Josie, I think, had like 100.
Jonathan Osorio has played 17,000 minutes total for Toronto.
Mm-hmm.
Josie Altidore has 10,500.
Well, that's why I put Osorio, just because he's been playing more for them.
Oh my God! Are you going to tell me that if in 10 years, when Jeff Lorenowitz has 20,000 minutes for Atlanta, you're going to put him over Josef Martinez, who only has 10,000 because he tore his ACL and now he's leaving?
It's different.
Of course
Josef can score 30
in a season. Of course you're not. It's so straightforward. Oh God, you just. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we hope that you enjoyed, and we'll see you next time on the Designated Players Podcast.
All right, bye.